I want to, without sounding like a broken record, say that this is the first budget of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Commander-in-Chief, President Bola Tinubu. And for that reason, I want to say, like they say, it's baptism of fire. Having said that, Mr. President, I want to say that looking at the face of what we have here on paper, we have a budget of 27.5 trillion naira with a deficit of about 9.18 on the face of it, which is against a deficit of 13.78 of the previous year, 2023. But if you put all of them together, if you look at the direct deficit, if you look at debt servicing of 8.25, and you look at tax expenditure of 2.7 trillion, the whole deficit around this budget is about 17 trillion. Mr. President, of course, deficit budgeting is not an issue, but I think that what is at issue here is how we can fund the budget and implement the budget. Mr. President, in 2023, we are all aware that the performance of the budget was less than 50%. And so, if you see the quantum of money that has been budgeted for 2024, it's of course a budget of hope. And hope, they say, is the driver of life. But if you look at a few assumptions here, Mr. President, there is cause to sound some caution, and that we must walk the talk if this budget must be implemented. Mr. President has said that he will reduce borrowing. Very good. Mr. President said he is going to plug all the leakages in our economy. Very beautiful. But if you talk to some of the assumptions that we have here, Mr. President, I think we must realize an issue, that we have a huge challenge in front of us. First of it is, Mr. President, the assumption on oil production. The budget puts the projected oil production at 1.78 million barrels. But the average production level for the 2 previous years had been 1.2. And so that puts a challenge in front of all of us here of adding additional 500,000 barrels of oil production per year. Certainly, this is not going to be a main challenge. Mr. President, that means also that the activities of oil theft, illegal refineries, and other factors that will enhance oil production are addressed, and that is the only way that we can effectively implement the budget. Exchange rate projection, 750, beautiful. But in recent times, we have realized that the up and downs of the activities of the official market rates and the parallel market had been anything but encouraging. At one point, we got to the level of 750, but the next week, we are at 1,160. And Mr. President, I want to aver here that the exchange rate determines to a large extent the inflation rate. And from all indications from 2023, inflation has been a very serious bane on the implementation of our budget. And so, again, I want to believe that Mr. President, as a reputable accountant in government, a veteran himself, will find a way around the problems of the undulating exchange rates. There's no gainsaying, therefore, that we are in a situation that we all have to sit and put our hands on the deck to ensure that we implement the budget as effectively as it can so that we can open up the economy, so that we can invite and attract investors, and of course, take our people out of the poverty line that we have found ourselves today. Mr. President, let me say here that last year, in the last Senate, 9th Senate, I made a point here that the UNESCO projects that every nation must at least put 26% of its annual budget on education. Today, from what our president has said, emphasis is on children. You can't bring up children without education. And what we have on our hands now, with 7% or so put on education now, certainly Mr. President's desire to educate our children and bring them up as true citizens may have some challenges. And so I want to say that if this year's budget has passed, we have another year. We must think seriously. Because look at what we have in our educational system here. Very epileptic. Your child goes to the...
Leader, you have 10 seconds, Leader. Because what is good for the goose is always good for the gander.
Serious note, I think that the time has come when we begin to think seriously about allocating money to education. ASU has been on strike most of the time because of money. Schools have been closed as a result of lack of infrastructures and lack of money. And so if we continue in that way, most of our children are going to neighboring countries to go to school because they don't know the time they are going to graduate from Nigerian universities. And so we must address this. Finally, Mr. President, I said before that unless we go away from this enveloping system of budgeting, we will find it very difficult to get it right. The enveloping system, as we have identified here, is a system of corruption. Every year, there is provision for e-library. Every year, there is provision for computers. And you begin to wonder, where are these items? They are neither there nor here. And so, Mr. President, I think that we must think about an alternative budgeting system. Because like I said, if we continue to do this thing the same way all the time, we won't get a different result.
Thank you.
The 2022 supplementary budget, we must remind ourselves, in acceding to Mr. President's request to withdraw money from some projects to accommodate the palliative, we all agreed that projects that have been taking money from will have those monies returned and even more in the 2024 budget. I hope we have not forgotten them, because some of us may not be able to go home if some of those projects whose monies had been taken for the palliatives are not executed. And particularly, Mr. President, as chairman of the Appropriation Committee, you remember that a perennial road problem in my place, I pleaded with the committee, and you acceded and put some money there, the Otukpo Oju Road. That money was taken away. Now, the budget is here. I hope sincerely that project and other projects will have their monies restored so that the projects can be executed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Minor.
I wrote on the register that I want to speak today, not yesterday. I only commented on child abuse and women abuse yesterday. If that is an offense to the acting leader, thank God you are acting. Mr. President, let me lend my voice and commend you for getting us to sit today, being Friday. I think this is to respond to Mr. President's request that we do everything we can to maintain the budget cycle. And you have provided leadership for us to sit. And that, for me, is an indication that we are ready to make all the sacrifices we need to make to ensure that the National Assembly is not found wanting in terms of the critical idea of when does this budget take effect. There is no need to recycle the arguments already made about the key objectives. They are laudable, they are clear, they are doable. But I want us to be careful in commenting on some of the issues that we had already discussed, namely exchange rate. Those were discussed about 2 weeks before. And I'm not sure it's going to be helpful for us to revisit it. Have you already passed a decision on it? But the additional point I want to raise is that exchange rate is not a matter for parliaments to debate. It should not be a political issue. It is a matter that should be driven by competent, well-skilled, well-thought-out macroeconomic policy. It is those policies in effect that will determine whether the Naira dashes up or it dashes down. I believe, as the President said yesterday, we are supposed to do everything bold, take tough decisions on the economy, block leakages, ensure that Nigerian people get value for money, and we sensibly focus on job creation, which simply means producing more at home rather than importing more from abroad. If those policies are achieved, they will actually have positive impact on exchange rate. We have to be careful. We can't endorse the activities of those who are operating outside the system as being the key drivers or those who determine what our exchange rate should be. That is why those or people who claim that they are buying Naira at 1,100, I'm like, we as senators, we shouldn't be seen to be patronizing a market that is unknown to law. Therefore, I think the 750 is okay. If I have my way, it should be 500. Because the indicator should be that as a nation, we do not accept that the Naira continue to suffer endless flogging. It makes macroeconomic objective, in my view, to target the idea of bringing down the exchange rate and achieve stability at the rate of 750 or even below. Lastly, in order to keep to time, sir, I hope that those resolutions we pass in this House that we directed to Parliament, this is the occasion to visit them, with particular reference to the Bini, Auchi, Okene, Lokoja Road. That job has passed through almost 4 presidents. And as we speak, Mr. President, I can't go to my village from Benin. Senator Monday cannot go home. So I hope that the appropriation committee, when we see the details, that road is reflected during this dry season so that this government can have the credit of completing a road that has passed through several presidents. If we don't get that road done, the economy of the South-South is severely affected, particularly the construction sector. Because all the solid minerals in Edo have to move through.
You have 10 seconds remaining.
It's a serious economic challenge for the people of Niger Delta and if you like, for the whole country. Because going from Lagos to Abuja, that is the road our trailers have to pass. That is the road that services 2 giant cement factories that are driving part of our economy and creating jobs for our people. So I want to plead, I'm happy the chairman of appropriation, you are listening, that regardless, since I haven't seen the details, that Auchi Bini Road is reflected in the budget, and with a view to completing it this year, 2024. I mean, this next year budget. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.